We are asking for feedback forms to be completed at the end of the session. You'll see in the chat that there's a link to the feedback form. I'll also include it again at the end of the session, and we'll send you a thank you for attending email with the link there as well. So if you could please complete that form, that would be great. You also see in the chat, we have a chat function. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type your question in the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout, and we'll pause periodically throughout the presentation to answer any questions you may have. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our CEO, Greg Petoniak. He's going to go ahead and get our presentation started.
Well, thank you, Colleen, and good afternoon, everybody. We're delighted to see you joining us for this information session on Going Pro Talent Fund. I won't take a lot of your time, but I wanted to share a little bit of information with you about SEMCA Michigan Works and reassure you on our credibility to assist you on this. So as this agenda indicates, we are going to move quickly through my section as well as business services and move right into Going Pro Talent Fund. So SEMCA, by the way, is very proud to be a partner in assisting employers with Going Pro Talent Fund. GPTF, as we call it, has been a very effective tool for many Michigan employers in upgrading their incumbent workforce or training new hires. And by the way, folks, it is one of those programs that enjoys very strong bipartisan support in the Michigan legislature and with multiple governors of both parties. And in fact, just this week, Governor Whitmer announced that for the American Rescue Plan funds that the state has received, that she wants to increase Going Pro Talent funding by $100 million over the next 3 years. That's essentially a doubling of total amount of funds available. So it's an extraordinary opportunity for many employers, I think, now and into the next few years to obtain this assistance. So feel free, anytime you see a state rep or senator or a governor, to thank them for their support of this program. So SEMCA Michigan Works existed for 25 years and has been a leader in talent development programs. We have been created by your community and business leadership, a formal partnership of Monroe and Wayne counties in the 3 conferences you see listed. We have a workforce development board, of which a majority of that is private sector membership coming from private employers. We operate 6 Michigan Works American Job Centers throughout our SEMCA region, which is out Wayne County and Monroe. And by the way, there are 16 Michigan Works agencies in the state of Michigan, and SEMCA is the 2nd largest population base of those 16. You might be interested in knowing that our commitment to high performance standards is reflected by our voluntary commitment to seek national accreditation every 3 years relative to our program and fiscal administration, and we're very proud of having obtained that. So the next slide gives you insight into mission and vision statements that are the product of year-long strategic planning process that we do every 3 years at SEMCA. You can see that we're very committed to innovation and a commitment to the public and private sector partnerships to help employers and job seekers. Who are our customers? Most people look at Michigan Works and say we're there to help the job seekers, and that's absolutely true. But please understand we're a demand-driven system that employers are equal customers for us. The more we know and understands the need of employers, the better are we in a position to assist job seekers with job search, as well as pursuing training options and career pathways that have a future. So again, we employers are equally important to us. And of course, we also have some programs, including GPTF, that can be supportive of your incumbent employees too. So we try to remain nimble and adapt and not be static. We in recent years, we've made a greater commitment to career pathways awareness for youth and adults. We are limiting our training funding to achieving credentials in only high demand occupations that can be documented with data and or by industry groups. So we don't waste our training funds and and send people down a path that's unrealistic for employment opportunities. And we have made a greater commitment in recent years to developing work-based learning options to help people transition from needing income but seeking a career pathway and better skills. So obviously apprenticeships are an excellent model of work-based learning. So that's SEMCA, and I'm going to turn it over to Kate Brady-Medley, our Chief Operating Officer, to speak to you a little bit more about our business services. Unless there are some questions of me, I don't know, did any show up in the chat? Doesn't look like it. So unless anybody has any questions of me, Kate, you're on.
All right, thank you, Greg. And good afternoon, everyone. So hopefully if you're on this call and you're an employer or a business in our area, you're familiar with our business services team and have had an opportunity to potentially work with them in the past. But either way, I would like to share a little bit of information about what we can provide in addition to the great information we're going to have in just a few minutes about Going Pro Talent Fund. So some of the services that our business service team can assist you with would be generally talent recruitment. This can include things like hosting virtual job fairs. And we do typically host a virtual job fair at least every month. And we've had hundreds of job seekers register and participate. And our numbers are just getting larger for those as the word is getting out. So that's certainly something we can support you with. Our staff can help you to draft job descriptions or update job descriptions, to pre-screen applicants. We can help you to post jobs on Pure Michigan Talent Connect, which of course reaches a huge network of potentially interested candidates, which will connect you to thousands of individuals who are seeking new jobs or new careers. We can promote the job opportunities that you're most in need of on our social media platforms and across many networks that we're involved with. And of course, we can also help to develop and financially support employer candidate training, which includes registered apprenticeship opportunities and, of course, Going Pro Talent Fund, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Our staff can also help to assist you with research labor market information, which again will help you to know that your postings are posting at a good rate and that you're going to attract kind of the talent that you're looking for. We can support you with access to no-cost fidelity bonding if that's a need that you have in your organization. We can support speaking engagements and networking events. We have a business resource network called Connections, which is great for helping employers who are having retention issues. It provides supportive services to employees who may need that extra bit of help in order to maintain their employment. For example, helping with transportation or childcare needs that might be impacting their ability to continue to be employed. We also have space at our American Job Centers, which are located across Wayne and Monroe County, where you can come on site and host interviews or other activities connected with hiring. And we can host workshops, information sessions on topics, including registered apprenticeships, labor market information, etc., and support other recruitment events as needed. And so that's just to give you a flavor of where we are with business services. I'd like to turn it over now to Colleen, who is our resident expert on the Going Pro Talent Fund, and she's going to share a lot of great information about this wonderful opportunity to support your existing and potential future staff with some training opportunities. So thank you, Colleen. Colleen, I can't hear you. Could you turn your...
I got the camera, but I didn't have the microphone. Sorry. Thank you. Thanks for the information, Kate. We appreciate that. Before we get started with the presentation, I just want to review the documents that were sent to you that would be sort of in your packet. You're going to see a Going Pro Talent Fund overview, a Going Pro Talent Fund fact sheet, an employer guide, and a frequently asked questions. Those are for fiscal year 21, so they're actually last year's documentation for the program. We have not received the fiscal year 22 documents yet for next year, but as soon as we get those, we'll be sure to send them to everybody. You'll see an updated eligible, ineligible training guide, the scoring criteria for this year, a sample application, a sample training plan, The business services area coverage, Greg talked about that a little bit, about where our offices in Wayne County are located in Monroe County, and the business services representative contacts at each of those locations. And then again, a copy of the presentation. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat, and we'll stop periodically to answer any questions you may have. Okay, so some of you may be used to the Going Pro Talent Fund, so this information may be a little repetitive for you, but we may also have some new employers on the call, and we want to cover the basic information about the program. So the purpose of it is to provide a competitive award to employers to assist them in training, developing, and retaining current and new employees. It helps to ensure that Michigan's employers have the talent they need to compete and grow, and individuals have the skills they need for in-demand jobs. It's available to private sector employers in Michigan. It's awarded on a competitive basis, and the application window occurs for a certain period of time every year. In the presentation, if you see anything that's highlighted with a blue asterisk, it means that it's a new information for this year. So the strategy of the program is designed to create a public and private partnership with businesses to develop training models that adapt to in real time with changing employer demand. All training must be completed within 1 year from the date of the award and lead to a credential for a skill that's transferable and recognized by industry. Employers who request funding must actively participate in the development of the training plan and must commit to retaining individuals at the completion of training. If any new jobs are created as a result of the training, they should be filled with individuals recruited with the assistance of the Michigan Works agency, with us and the Pure Michigan Talent Connect website that Kate spoke about. And additionally, this year, I think it was also included in the last couple of years, that due to the challenges, as we know, employers are having in finding the talent that they need, the state has included some incentives for hiring certain targeted populations. And we'll go over those as we go on in the presentation. So who is eligible as an employer to apply? It's any private sector employer. It can be a for-profit or not-for-profit company. Employers must have a need for skill enhancement, including apprenticeship programs and advanced tech programs for current employees or new hires. You must have a Michigan presence. You must be in compliance with all federal and state tax obligations. They will check. They've always asked every year if you're compliant with your taxes. However, within the last few years, they actually started checking, so that will be verified. You must be willing to participate in the project's eligibility parameters and guidelines, and we'll cover some of those in a little bit. Public institutions or entities are not eligible to apply. So it's no county road commissions, municipally owned utilities, federally qualified health centers or community health authorities, etc. So who are eligible employees? They can be any current employee, and they consider a current employee someone who's on your payroll at the time of application, or new hires. And new hires are considered anyone that was hired 30 days prior to, on or after the award date. There'll be a specific date stated on the training agreement if you are awarded funding, so you'll know how many days prior to that date you can have someone considered to be a new hire. They must be permanent full-time employees, and the state considers full-time at least 32 hours a week. And any individuals who work in Michigan for whom the employer pays all applicable taxes to the state of Michigan, regardless of where the employee lives. We are connected to 3 other states, Indiana, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So we do have employees that commute from out of state, but that's fine. They are eligible trainees as long as they work in Michigan and that employer pays their taxes on those employees to the state of Michigan. They have to be 18 years of age or older. U.S. citizen or legally authorized to work in the U.S. Seasonal and or part-time employees, current or future, are not eligible for funding. Okay, so we covered eligible employers and we covered eligible employees. Do we have any question about who's an eligible employer or who would be an eligible trainee? Okay, I don't see any in the chat, so we'll go ahead and continue. All right, so now let's talk about training. Funding will be utilized to provide short-term training to meet current documented needs of employers. No single training should exceed 6 months. And all classroom or customized training and apprenticeship training should conclude within 1 year from the date of award. All new hire on-the-job training must include the 90-day post-retention period within that 1 year of completion. Who are eligible training providers? It's a pretty long list. Kind of anybody would be an eligible training provider, but they should be a Michigan community college or university. They can be private training providers, a training provider identified and agreed upon by all partners who can do accelerated just-in-time training. Any U.S. DOL Joint Apprenticeship Training Center. I know we have one located in Chelsea. It's for electricians, and I'm sure there are several or a couple other ones located in Wayne County. They can be vendors providing training and operation with equipment or systems for which they were provider. So if you purchased equipment or software and you need to have training on those items, whoever you bought that from can be a person that comes in and trains your employees on those items. Employers can be a training provider, but only if their resources or equipment are exclusive and training is not available elsewhere. So this would be for classroom training, and there is a definition about what exclusive means, and I have a part of it is that it's training that is owned and controlled by the employer and is subject to laws such as copyright, patents, or trademarks. So for example, if you developed the software, you're the only one that knows how to use it, and it was something you created, then you can train your current employees on that software. Or if you invented some sort of machinery and you're the only one that has that machinery, you can train your current employees on that machinery for classroom type training credential. Proprietary schools as licensed in the state of Michigan. And the preference is to have all training occur in Michigan. However, if for some reason the training is only available outside of Michigan, that would be allowable as long as we can state it in the rationale why you're using that training provider. There are 3 types of training, and we mentioned some of them. So the first type is what's called custom or classroom training. It can be for current employees or new hires. It must lead to a credential for a skill that's transferable and recognized by industry. The credential should allow for the individual to retain employment, or in the case that they become unemployed, gain employment in a shorter time frame. It must be conducted by a third party unless, again, exclusive in nature. It may take place at the training provider or on-site at the employer. And it may take place online, but employer must provide a rationale to support online learning. So the preference would be for some sort of in-person learning. However, we understand that we're currently in a pandemic and a lot of the training is being moved online, which would be fine. Again, preference that it's instructor-led. And so there's still some sort of classroom type atmosphere, but it's online and it has to be stated in the right rationale why it's not done in person. And then if you want to look at your eligible and ineligible training guidance handout, I just want to review a few of these with you. So these are just examples. It's not all inclusive. So eligible training pretty much is anything that's some sort of technical training. And you can get an idea of what that is from items here on this list. So you'll see that some of them are highlighted with an asterisk. What those mean is that there's an additional definition to what's acceptable training in those areas. So you'll see that the definition under leadership and management, it includes that that it's acceptable only if the employer has developed an operations strategy or a plan that includes specifics on the proposed training. It's not a general overview. It's not a standalone or self-contained seminar or workshop, and a syllabus or curriculum will need to be provided. And so you'll see that again in a couple different areas. They did add a couple of new trainings. You'll see them highlighted here in blue. One is a Child Development Associate Certificate and Implicit Bias Training. And then the definition's been updated for sales acceleration training. These are some examples of ineligible training. You'll see that pretty much anything that's a soft skill isn't eligible. Again, no seminars, conferences, or webinars, standalone workshops. Can't pay for any subscriptions for e-learning. On-the-job training for current employees, unless it's an apprenticeship, it's only for new hires. Overview of safety training, it has to be a little bit more in depth, but you'll see definitions on those. Microsoft Office, unless it's really those enhanced or advanced type of Microsoft Office programs. And then again, newly done a definition update for the continuing education. The second type of training is what's called on-the-job training. And this is for, again, new hires. They're for individuals who were hired 30 days prior to, on, or after the award date. If an individual was hired 30 days prior to the award, the reimbursable training is to begin on or after the award date. So we're not going to pay for any training within those first 30 days until the actual award date and afterwards. It's work-based learning and training that's conducted at the workplace. It's training a new hire to obtain skills to become proficient in the new job. It should not be used for low-wage, high-turnover occupations. There is sort of a requirement that covers a retention period, and you'll see at the bottom what that entails regarding the payout or reimbursable award amount for those. The 90-day retention period begins upon the completion of the training period and must be completed within that 1 year requirement. And then you'll see that if a new hire trainee completes the on-the-job training and then is retained for the full 90 days after training, you'll receive 100% of the reimbursement. If for some reason they leave and they're there only for 60 days post-training, you'll get 75%, and if it's 30 days, it's 50%. The third type of training is apprenticeships. These are registered US DOL apprenticeships, and they're for first year apprenticeships only. And the state is defining that this year as a first year apprentice that's registered on or after December 1st of 2021. And it may be a current employee or a new hire. And it's a combination of classroom training or a combination of classroom and on the job. It cannot be strictly on the job training. What can the funding pay for? The funding can pay for the actual cost of classroom training, wage reimbursement for the new hire on the job training, or the combination of classroom training and on the job training. We cannot pay for the purchase of tools or other, we have a purchase of tools or other equipment, no computers or laptops, no licensing fees, no testing fees, no curriculum development, travel costs for trainees, or online subscriptions. Strictly for the course cost. How much are you eligible to receive? For classroom training, it's $1,500 or less per trainee. And for a new hire on the job training, again, it's $1,500 or less per trainee. For USDL registered apprenticeships, it's up to $3,000 per trainee. And then here's the subject about the targeted incentives. Those are for those targeted populations. If you that was mentioned earlier, it's for new hires. So if you hire someone that fits one of these criteria, you will receive an additional $500, and it would be $1,000 for someone that completes 75% or total completion of a high school diploma or GED. So if you hire someone that's a veteran, an active military reservist, or an older worker, returning citizen, they added 2 more this year, an individual with a disability or someone that's on public assistance. You could receive $500, and it applies to just one criteria. So if you hire a veteran who is an older worker, you would still just get the one $500 and not $1,000 for both categories. Okay. So let me go into the chat and see if we have any questions.
No questions so far, Colleen.
Okay, thank you. We'll move along. Okay, so this list looks really long. They've added, as you can see, a lot of the blue asterisks. A lot of things were added this year. They aren't really new. They were things that were sort of always implied for the program, but I think people maybe weren't getting the information from the implication, and so they wanted to actually put something in writing. So an employer must be actively involved in the planning and design of the training project. It must include realistic expectations. It's about drilling down to the real training need. What can be accomplished and still meet production and or other business needs, and you would be accountable to implement the approved plan. So it's really looking at just because you can ask for everything in the kitchen sink, you might not want to say every training you've ever wanted to have put down. You may want to apply for something next year. You may want to use some of our traditional funding dollars for training that Kate mentioned. But really, what are your needs currently that can meet those program guidelines? You must pay wages to employees that are equal to or greater than the prevailing wage for the local labor market for that applicable job title. Again, we have business service representatives that can help you with that if needed. It should not be utilized, again, for low wage, high turnover occupations, and that it's the expectation the training leads to a higher skills and results in higher wages. The program does ask for wages before training, after training, and 6 months post-training to see if that credential somehow a person was promoted or their wage increased. You must sign a contract or training agreement with a Michigan Works agency, and it will outline the employer's role and responsibilities in the training project. This isn't really new. We've done this every year. Again, but it sounds like originally just said you had to do a training agreement, so they wanted to include that extra information. You must provide an impact story upon completion of training. And the only thing that's new about this is that it's going to be done online this year and next year. Normally it was just something we had a electronic paper template for, and now it's going to be an online format. You must commit to retain employees at the completion of training. I think, again, this was something that was always sort of implied that if training was conducted that you would retain them, but this time they wanted to put it in writing. Provide wage information prior to training, post-training in 6 months. I just said that. Provide required documentation for reimbursement, and I'll cover that in a minute. Provide projected employer contributions on application, then confirm projected contributions or revise the contribution post-training. So there's a couple things that's new with this. Employers have always projected contribution. So for example, a couple of things will be if a training costs $1,600, and again, we're only able to pay $1,500, and you would pay the additional $1,600. That's considered a cash contribution. If you were to pay wages while the employees are in training, that's a contribution. If you bought equipment or software that employees are going to be trained on, the cost of that software or equipment could be a contribution. So there's a variety of things. What happens on an application is an employer projects what those amounts may be. And what the state now is asking you is at the end of the completion of all your training is to find out if you actually contributed those amounts that you were projected. And if not, do a revision. So that's part's kind of new. We've done it for the last couple of years. But again, what's new this year is that they may actually audit that information and ask for the receipts and really check to see if that amount was contributed. So again, the application should include calculations. How did you get to those amounts that you say you're contributing? Like show the math. New is a release time for trainees working towards a high school diploma or GED completion during work hours may be used. And again, new, you should retain supporting documentation for your contributions as random audits may happen. So those 3 items are new. You must close out the prior year award before receiving a new award. So this item, even though it's marked as blue, it's changed is the date, but normally an employer had to close out the current year before they applied or received an award for the next year. Typically, awards are announced in the middle of December with the training period starting January 1st. So that means your training, all your training would have to be done before those next year awards are announced in the middle of December, because you do have 12 months to complete all your training. What's different for this year is because we started a little late last year, training didn't start till February 1st. So some of the employers have until January 31st of 2022 to complete their training. And awards again are announced usually mid-December. They're giving them that extra month to complete training, which normally doesn't happen. And commit to using Michigan Works and Talent Connect to recruit to fill any open positions. Okay. So this is the information about the actual application. There is a required fact-finding visit that employers are interested in applying need to do with a Michigan Works representative. So our business service representatives will meet with you. It's normally done on site, or it says it should be done on site, which would be the preference, but we know that during our current pandemic, it may not be the best thing. So we are allowed to do it virtually. I would probably try to recommend, if you've never done it before, an in-person visit would be better, but again, we'll have to set that up. We can set that up virtually. It's an online application. We've done the online applications just for the last couple of years. It's to be completed by the employer. So here's the new information for this year. Applications are going to open on Monday, September 20th. And it's going to close on Friday, October 15th at 5 p.m. The reason they're just marked as new because of their new dates this year. They're also extending the application period this year. Normally it's a 2-week period that starts on October 1st. What they're doing is they're opening it up a couple of weeks early. So there will actually be a 4-week window for applications this year. Once the application period closes, the state will review all the submitted applications and score them until funds are exhausted. And just because the application was completed, it does not guarantee funding. Even if you scored enough to receive funding, it does not guarantee you receive funding if the funding has been exhausted. However, you would go into a queue, and if funding becomes available anytime throughout the year, you may be granted that funding. And I've seen it done. I've seen employers receive funding in April or May. So it does happen. I did give you the new scoring criteria for this year. It's in your handouts. It does change a little bit every year. So some things you'll see highlighted here in the blue asterisks. One of the big ones, I guess, would be that it's now actually on a 100-point scale. The past few years, it always would be like 85 or different amounts, but we finally made it they made it a 100-point scale this year. So some of the amounts for each category changed a little bit to get to that number. The biggest one is the rationale, and it's composed of 3 parts. There's an introduction, who are you, what do you do? The business case is basically why training is needed. Are you expanding? Are you, may you lose business if training's not done? Has technology changed? Are you unable to find the talent with the right skills needed? So that's all one of the major points for that. And then the tie into training. So that would be the actual training courses you're looking at and how does that training that you're looking to take sort of meet those needs that you have in the business case. A new category this year is the diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you're an employer that has a majority ownership, that's minority owned, women owned, veteran owned, an individual with disability owned, or geographically disadvantaged business enterprise, you could receive 5 points. Employer contribution, we talked about this a little bit. We'll go into it a little bit more depth in a minute. If your employer contribution is equal to or greater than the amount you're requesting for funding, you could get 10 points. If you are contributing something, you can get 5 points. If your contribution is 0, you'll get 0 points. The only change in this one is the number of points assigned to each category. If you're a small business, depending on your number of employees, you can get points. If you have fewer than 50 full-time employees, you can get 10 points. If you have fewer than 100, you can get 5. And then if you have a majority of trainees that are new hires, the only difference again about this is they just spread out the percentages. They added more. So if you have 50% or more of the trainees on your application are new hires, you'll get 10 points. 30 to 49 is 7, 10 to 29 is 5, less than 10% is 0. If your application has a USDL registered apprenticeship on it, you can receive 5 points. If any of your training is done at a community college or university that has college credits attached to it, that could go towards a certificate or degree program, you'd get 5 points. And then how much you're actually requesting and funding, the smaller the amounts that you request, the more points you'll get. I'm going to go through the application, what the online application looks like kind of quickly. You'll have in your handouts what a finished version of the application looks like. So we'll review that at the end. But I just wanted you to be familiar once you get in the application, what you're looking at. The first thing you're going to do is register. If you don't already have an account, you will already create an account. If you already have a Pure Michigan Talent Connect account, you can actually use those credentials to log in. What you're going to do if you have to register is just fill out some basic information like any other registration for a website. Once you are registered, you're going to request an authorization for an application. So what you'll do is request a new authorization. This is where you'll then fill out information about your company. The one thing to watch here is the site plant facility name. If you already have a Talent Connect account or you've done an application before, once you start typing in your federal employer ID number or your business name, it may come up, and when you click on it, it may fill in all these fields for you. If your name is not necessarily the same as the employer name, you would type the location here. However, it's not just the city. So if you're Ford and you have a plant in Rawsonville, you'd have Ford as the employer name and Rawsonville as the location. This actually is what they'll publish as who's received the award. So this is where they get the published name from. So you'd want to include Ford-Rawsonville there. It would be for a new application, and this is where you'll include the information about the Michigan Works representative that you worked with during your fact-finding meeting, where this our MWA would be listed as SEMCA in the drop-down menu, and you'll list the business service representative contact information there. So once you submit an authorization and everything looks great, we will approve it and then you'll have access to the application. If you submit an authorization and we have not met with you yet, the authorization request will be denied and we will go ahead and just include a note to ask you to contact us so we can set up that meeting. The information for the application, again, is just more information about your company, that tax obligation, are you compliant, that section here, and your primary and secondary contact. The next portion is your rationale that we talked about, your business case, and if you've received a previous Skilled Trades Training Fund or Growing Pro Talent Fund award, you would step information here on how it impacted your business. And again, how the training ties into the needs that you stated in the business case. The last thing then in this portion was just include when the training starts and when all your training will end. Again, the maximum time is 1 year, and you have to include that 90-day retention period if you're doing new hire on the job training. So this is what it looks like once you enter all the information. You have a copy of these in your handouts. Your company information, your rationale portion, and then the date trainings will start and end. Any questions on the application?
There is a question, Colleen, I'll read it for you. It's, can I have 2 registered accounts in case I wanted 2 people to work on the application?
Yes. So what you would do is you would have one main person start the authorization and the application. And then what you would do, instead of requesting an authorization on a new application, you would request an authorization on an existing application, and we can tie that second person into the application that's already been started. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. But yes, the answer is yes. And then there's just a way to do it, and we can help you with that. My recommendation would be to have one person start it, at least just create the authorization, and even if they just do the employer information portion of it, and then have the second person go in and request an authorization for an existing application. It looks like someone might be typing a question. So let's give them a second. Okay, all right. I think that's it. Okay, so we're talking about the application. The next portion is about what's called the training plan. And really, this might be the area that you start first, because you might not be able to complete that rationale portion or how the training ties into your needs until you really identify who the trainees are and what training you're looking to complete. You also have a copy of a sample training plan we're going to look at in a minute. So this is what it'll look like once you enter the information. So this is how the training plan is put together on the online system. You're going to identify all your training providers first and get those entered. Then you're going to enter the course names, the date of the training, and the cost per trainee. Then you're going to start adding the employees to those trainings. You're going to enter your current employees first. Then you're going to select which trainees they're going to go to that you've already entered. Then you're going to do the new hires. You'll also identify those first-year apprentices, and we'll go to walk through the online app training plan just to see what those look like. So again, when you start the training plan portion of the application, this is where you'll start entering the training provider information for each training provider. The drop-down menu is going to ask what type is it? Is it a college or university? A huge list we had. Is it a vendor? Is it a is it a proprietary institution? Is it the employer? Are you going to be training new hires? The name of the training provider, what type of credential will the person receive once they're done? Is it college credits? Is it a license? Is it a certificate of completion? Where the training provider is located and how training will be delivered. Is it on site at the employer? is it at the training provider or is it online? And you'll do this for each training provider you have. Once all the training providers are entered, they're going to be on this drop-down menu. So then you'll pick each one. So if I entered Schoolcraft College as a training provider, they'll be in this menu. I'll select them and say my training course would be Welding 101. It's going to be for a certificate, or it might have college credits attached to it. And or it's going to be for current classroom training, or on-the-job training, or apprenticeship classroom training, or apprenticeship on-the-job training. So that's the categories there, sorry. The dates the training is going to take place and how much it is per person. So you'll go through and add each training course. Once you have all the training courses entered, then you're going to start adding the employees or trainees. There's a template you can use. It's just a spreadsheet. You can just add, it'll ask for first name, last name, and hourly wage, and you can upload that. Or you can add each employee individually. All the courses you entered will be down here at the bottom, and then you would just select which course. So if I add Tom Jones, makes $20 an hour, and it may say he's going to Welding 101, I would check that box. It's the same thing for new hires, except for you don't know their names. So the names on the template would just be the job title and how many positions for each job title and the hourly wage. So you say, well, I need to hire 3 welders. So there'll be a welder, 3, $20 an hour, and they're also going to welding training. Once you've added all the employees and all the training courses, it's going to total up the cost of all training for you. And then how much we'll actually be able to pay through the Going Pro Talent Fund. So again, $1,500 per trainee, $3,000 for apprenticeships. Anything over that amount will be what's called excess training costs that would not be reimbursed. We consider that employer contribution. So it'll do all the math for you. I know this is very small and I apologize. And the sheet you received is small. You should have an Excel version and a PDF version so you can kind of make them larger if needed. But I just wanted you to see, once you put all that information to the online system, this is actually what it looks like when you download it. So at the top, again, you'll see your company name. This is where the published name goes. So again, you want to make sure it's the company name as well, not just a location. All your current employees will be listed here with their wages. The pink is the classroom training. So it'll have the training provider, the dates of training, the name of the training course, and how much it is per person. This aqua blue color is for on-the-job training. So you'll see that there's none for current employees because it's not allowable. It's only for new hires. The gray is for apprenticeship classroom training. So this company has a lot of current employee first-year apprentices. Training provider, dates of training, course name. And then they're also going to be doing on-the-job training for those apprentices. So it'll say the training providers, the company's name, and how many hours of training. And then the reimbursements based on the hourly wage times those numbers hour training. So then you'll see the total amount for each of the for the total cost of the courses plus the on-the-job training. And if anything is over the maximum amount the talent fund is allowed to provide, it'll be in that employer contribution section. The bottom portion is just for new hires. So again, names aren't available, so they're just job titles. This employer again is hiring 3 electricians. They're all first-year apprentices. So they're doing classroom training and on-the-job training. And they're doing machine operators with classroom training and on-the-job training as well. Okay. So again, once you complete the training plan, it's automatically going to calculate your employer cash contribution. There are several other categories for employer contribution. I mentioned a couple like projected wages while trainees are in training. The cost of equipment or software. So there'll be additional sections for you to complete. And then this is what it looks like as part of your application. It'll do the total cost of training, how much talent fund will cover, the excess amount as a cash contribution. This employer is projecting wages that they're going to pay while the employees are in training. Again, what the description is, show the math. How did you get to that number? They're going to pay travel costs. Is it mileage? Is it plane fare? Is it hotel costs? Cost of new equipment or software? Description of the equipment or software. You're going to pay supportive services. For example, like tuition reimbursement, daycare assistance, any additional transportation assistance, and other. This year, we had some employers who had to rent additional space for training because of COVID restrictions. People had to be so far apart from each other, so their space wasn't big enough. They had to add that. We had some that rented additional chairs. So all of that portion would be employer contribution. Any questions on training plan and employer contributions? Okay. So you've done your application, you've done your training plan, you've submitted it, we've reviewed it, we've sent it off for the state, they've scored it, you were granted funding, you've completed all your training. How do you get reimbursed? So on completion of classroom training, to receive your reimbursement, you have to submit a copy of the invoice from the training provider. Proof of completion, it can be a copy of the credential, like a certificate signed by the instructor or training provider, a copy of certification for online courses, or a copy of grades for credit courses. You must send an invoice from your company to SEMCA for the amount that was awarded. So this may be different than the copy of the invoice from the training provider. Again, the course costs $1,500, so $1,600. So the training provider's invoice is $1,600, but then your invoice to us is only for $1,500 because that's all you're actually awarded for that course, because that's the maximum amount. Training verification is completed at the end of all training completions. So once you have everything done, it's going to be done online this year, so that's relatively new. It's going to be called a closeout. This is where you'll go back into your application. You'll mark all the people who completed the trainings, what their wages were at the completion of training, and add the names for those new hires that you had because we didn't have them previously. And then for any apprentices, you have to provide a RAPIDS report, which is a registered apprenticeship proof of that through the USDOL, and a participant demographic form. This is going to be uploaded to your application. So that's all a little bit new. That's why they're highlighted in blue. For completion of new hire on-the-job training, you must submit a company payroll register query from the payroll system or screenshots from the payroll systems dated at the 90-day retention period that includes the name of the employee, the hourly wage, the hire date, and if for some reason they didn't meet that 90-day mark, the termination date. And a copy invoice to a company invoice to SEMCA, because there is no training provider invoice and there is no certificate. If you have an apprentice that is doing on-the-job training as well, we do need a payroll query from them as well. Impact stories, I talked about this a little bit before. It's going to be done online. I included these categories. Normally, this is what they ask for. It was done sort of like in a paragraph form previously, or like a template. Now it's online and it has fields that you fill out. Questions on what happens at the end of training for reimbursement? I think someone might be typing, so let me just see. I'll read out loud. If you're doing an apprentice that lasts longer than a year, their training will not be complete in a year. What happens then? That's fine. it would just be for those specific courses they take. So for example, if you're a welding apprentice, there's, you may take what classes happen for the spring semester, or maybe they're offered that fall semester. So we'll only pay for those that happen during that year. The on-the-job training portion of that, you can calculate how many hours are for the total apprenticeship or how much it is for a whole year. We're obviously not going to pay that much, but you can get some contribution from that. But if, because after that first year, they could be considered a second year apprentice or a third year apprentice. For next year, so you can put them on as just current employees. So you can count them as a first year apprentice to get the full $3,000. After that, they'll just be considered current employees for any additional classroom training that you do. I hope that answered that, but yeah. So typically we'll just pay for what they are during that year. Okay, great. Thanks, Laura. All right, just a little bit more. We're wrapping it up. So let's go back to the presentation. So what happens next? So what happens after today? Please fill out a copy of the feedback form. There's a link at the very beginning of chat. I'll put a link in again. I think I have it here. Let's see. Yeah. I just added it to the chat again. So please complete that. I'll also send it out as a thank you for those who attended today. Once we receive that feedback form for you, and you're asking that you want to have a site visit for the Going Pro Talent Fund application, a business service representative will contact you within 2 business days. They'll schedule that meeting. The fact-finding meeting, they're going to review what your training needs are. They're going to look at if any other regional local partner funds are available, if training requests meets your employer's needs. Are there any other options for a successful outcome? Do we need to bring in other relevant partners? So you understand what your training needs are, but you really don't know who provides that type of training. I've been keeping track of all the approved trainings since 2013 when the program started. We can actually help you find training providers and training courses if you need it. We also have other funding available through our federal dollars that may be a better fit for you, or other partners. If you're looking for new space or things like that, we can bring in our economic development partners to work with you. If it's determined that the Going Pro Talent Fund is appropriate, after your fact-finding meeting, the BSR is going to email you a link to the application, and they're going to send you some templates. They're going to send you an application template and a training plan template. So even though that the online application isn't open yet, you can start working on the application and the training plan. So you're going to see sort of a blank training plan, like that colored training plan. And we're going to have some old versions of the applications that we're still like the paper copies we'll give you, that you can start completing that sort of rationale portion. So that way you can start working with that BSR between now and when the application period starts. And if you have everything done, you can just go ahead and copy and paste everything into the online application. If you're awarded funding, once the application period is over and we send it off, we're going to notify you via email that you've been awarded and schedule a time to meet so we can do that training agreement. Once we meet with you, we're going to review your training plan again. We're going to talk about the reimbursement process and when training can start. Oops. Okay. Any questions about next steps? Okay. All right, seeing none. So there's a couple of things. Please fill out the feedback form so we can contact you and know that you're interested in applying for the Going Pro Talent Fund this year. We do have that deadline that's coming up when that starts. And We also have those other services that Kate spoke about. So if you're entering in other business, maybe the talent fund program is not for you this year, but you want to have some help with recruiting or other services like the BRN, we can definitely talk to you about that. That's on the feedback form. You have here's my contact information. You should have all received an email from me with my email address and phone number. If you have any questions, please let me know. And you also have a BSR contact information sheet for those that are located in your area. So if you need to contact them, you're welcome to do so. You can contact them directly. All right, so I think I'm looking to see if we have any more questions. If anyone has great, okay, so I just saw, thank you all for joining us today. We'll be sure to send it out for you, and we again recorded the session. Once we have the updated docs for this year, we'll post them on our website. But I think if anybody that requested a copy of the docs, they were sent to you. And again, you have my email, so just let me know if you need anything additionally. All right, great, thanks everybody.